Hello, everyone. Do you remember this image? If so, you would know that it comes from my YouTube channel a couple of days ago, and it's entitled "Abort, They Discovered Us." And you get the idea from the actual thumbnail exactly what's going on. This all involves the Chinese embassy, this super Chinese embassy they're talking about approving for installation within the city of London. Now, the Daily Telegraph did some very, very good investigative work on this, where they uncovered an unredacted version of the floor plans for the place, including renovation and building work that's going to be done, including the locations of rooms that are going to be installed and their proximity to very vital data cables, which effectively are a lot like a central hub where a lot of crucial information about security, shares, money, communications, military traffic, and all that sort of thing comes through. So you can imagine having a building of that nature so close to something so vital. Anybody with half an ounce of sense would say no. It's actually horrific we're even having those discussions in the first place. There is a full, I think it's 30-minute video on the channel about this, and it's definitely worth having a look at. Well, the plot thickens. There's been some news out today that I want to share with you, and it really is quite disturbing, considering everything we now know and what's going on. You can see UK approves plans for Chinese mega embassy. So in effect, like anything in this country, they're going ahead with it anyway. The UK has approved Chinese plans for a huge new embassy in central London, despite opponents warning it could be used as a base for spying and pose security risks. So there you go, straight away, security risks. That is those data cables. I mean, literally, it was a meter from an access point where those cables can be. And when the building work is actually going on, they got ready access to all that area so they could lift things up and sort things out and all sorts of stuff. It is nuts beyond belief. Anyway, let's see what else this says, because it's very important. Security Minister Dan Jarvis says intelligence agencies have been integral to the process, and he was content any risks are being appropriately managed. Now, I'd like him to define what appropriately managed exactly means, what guidelines, what parameters are there around that idea of appropriately managed. It's just not a thing, really, because if you look at the risk, I mean, at the end of the day as well, we have a embassy in Beijing. Do we want to expand that? Is that what's going on here, tit for tat? But if you look at the bigger picture for a second, you look at something like Davos, right, where everybody's going to be crowding on. By the way, our mate Farage is going to have a word with them as well. That whole WEF kind of scenario. Everybody in that sphere who wants the things that they want to model that idea of their utopia after China. And now China wants a super embassy within London, within England, the capital city of England. Can you see what's going on here? I said to somebody earlier, you have truth, which we have in the news, and you have what's really going on. Do you know where I sit? Here. I'm trying to drag you from up there and bring you down here to try and understand what's really going on, because if you take the trouble to look, there is so much more information. The decision, which has been repeatedly delayed, has posed a challenge for the government as it seeks to balance its desire for closer ties with Beijing with warnings of the threat posed by China. And this, again, is outward reaching to everywhere else with no consideration for your own national security. It comes as Sir Keir Starmer is expected to visit Beijing early this year, becoming the first prime minister to do so since 2018. I think that has got some point there. I wonder what information can be dug out. In a letter the Housing Department confirmed that Housing Secretary Steve Reed, who is responsible for planning policy, has given permission for the development to go ahead, subject to certain conditions. Now, subject to certain conditions, what are they? One of the things you have to realise as well is that there's something like space for 200 people to sleep in this place. Why? What are they going to be doing? How long are they going to be spending there? Is it the same people all the time? Which parts of the building will they be working in? What are their jobs? What are their responsibilities? Who do they report to? What information? You know, we know nothing. And this is on our plot, on our land, and we know absolutely nothing. And when people have tried to get the plans out of them, they've just been met with obstruction and messing about. The site at the Royal Mint Court is close to the City of London and fibre optic cables. This is the thing. You can tap into fibre optics. They carry vast quantities of highly sensitive data, sparking concerns they could be used by China to infiltrate the UK's financial system. However, in its decision letter, the department said that there was no suggestion the use of the site as an embassy would interfere with the cables. As an embassy, a straight-out embassy, a little embassy, maybe, but this? It added that no bodies with responsibility for national security, including the Home Office and the Foreign Office, had raised concerns or objected to the proposal on the basis of the proximity cables. Now, I've got two questions. Do they know all the information they need to know? Or have they already assessed this as a non-threat and just going ahead with it anyway? Or do they know more than really we think they do? Jarvis told MPs the government had acted to increase the resilience of cables in the area through an extensive series of measures to protect sensitive data. The minister argued that the development brought clear national security advantages by consolidating China's diplomatic premises from 7 sites into a single location. So you're telling me that there's 7 sites in the country, and now they're going to have a freaking great massive one in the middle of London near some critical data cables. In a joint letter to the Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary about the embassy plans, MI5 Director General Sir Ken McCullum and GCHQ's Director Anne Keast-Butler said it was not realistic to expect to be able to wholly to eliminate each and every potential risk. I'll tell you what's very realistic. If there's any risk at all, you say no. Flat out no, absolutely not. You're not having it. It's really very, very plain and simple. What do these people don't understand? However, they added a proportionate package of national security mitigations have been developed for the site. What proportional package? What's proportionate about it? What's in the package? What's it going to do? How's it going to achieve it? When's it going to achieve it? Who's going to achieve it? I'm just a taxi driver, a working class taxi driver. Conditions on the planning approval include that the development must begin within 3 years. Don't freaking matter when it begins. And a steering group of local bodies should be established to manage protests outside the site. The whole idea of a protest is that it causes disruption. There's actually a court ruling which says that very clearly. If they don't, what's the point? You shouldn't be managing protests. You can have a look at the specifics of this. You got St Catherine's Dock, Tower of London just across there. So, you know, pretty much a central area. And the site of the embassy, or the proposed site of the embassy, very near Tower Bridge. And it's spitting distance from pretty much everything you need to get at within London. Opposition parties and some Labour MPs have called for the project to be blocked. Damn right. Local residents also oppose the plans and are planning a legal challenge. As I already said, there are something like 200 spaces for people to take up residence in that place. So what's that about? And also, so I recall from an interview with Ian Duncan Smith, there's 200 people in residence already. What's going to happen with them? They need access to the place, you know, to be able to do whatever. Now, let's have a look and continue. Conservative shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel, so Keir Starmer, has sold off our national security to the Chinese Communist Party with his shameful super embassy surrender. Yeah. Liberal Democrat Foreign Affairs spokesperson Callum Miller said the decision would amplify China's surveillance efforts here in the UK and endanger the security of our data, not to speak of the safety of the brave Hong Kongers on British soil. He added that it was categorically wrong that the Prime Minister had embraced these threats to further his flirtation with China. Reform UK said the decision was a serious threat to national security and a desperate attempt by the Labour government to cozy up to the Chinese Communist Party. I've already told you right at the beginning of all this, what you have to look at is the bigger picture. You have various factions, various countries with various heads of state all come together. They all have an overall objective, and that is their objective. They need to model what they want off of something big, something proven, something established, a model that is making what they want work. That model is China. Speaking of which, China ties. Embassies act as the headquarters for a country's representatives abroad. Downing Street said they were the first line of communication between nations, and those who don't accept this basic premise are either naive or recklessly isolationist. At 20,000 square metres, China's proposed new London embassy would be the biggest of its kind anywhere in Europe. Approval for the site has long been a priority for China's government, which bought the site for 255 million quid. They obviously wanted it. You look at that money in 2018, that's nearly a decade ago. The plans were initially rejected by Tower Hamlets Council in 2022 over safety concerns, but when China resubmitted its application in 2024, the government took over the decision. I bet they did. So you can see it was all going through under, the Tories. But as soon as Labour got in, and as I revealed in my previous video, that planning application was resubmitted. Quick sticks. Meanwhile, the UK is waiting for its own £100 million plan to redevelop the British Embassy in Beijing to be approved by China's authorities. I think that there might be something going on here, a bit of mutual embassarial behaviour, maybe. You want yours, give us ours. Rejecting China's plans would have risked setting back diplomatic relations between the two countries. Since winning power, Labour has sought closer trade ties with China, with Chancellor Rachel Reeves among several senior government figures to visit the country. However, critics have argued the threat of spying by the Chinese state and its intimidation against dissidents abroad are reasons for a more cautious relationship. So there you go. I mean, one of the things you have to realise about doing business with people abroad is, well, China, for example, they have massive factories. They have massive amounts of staff. Do they pay them what they should? But their overall production rate is absolutely massive. It's cheaper for businesses here to open up a factory in China, employ cheap labour, produce stuff, and then flood our markets with very cheap stuff that doesn't last half as long as other things should do. So is that really a good thing? And as for diplomatic relations, can you have diplomatic relations at the risk of national security? That is really the sticking point for me. And I keep going back and go and have a look at my previous video, those cables, where that embassy is, the central point in London, the whole entire size of it. America's got a large embassy in London, but it's nowhere near anything like this. On that wall, on that side, they want to get rid of a lot of what's there. There'll be building work all around there, and they'll be doing God knows what with God knows how. And we don't know what's going on. And you look at attempts to get full access to the full unredacted plans. It was problems. There were problems. So again, what are they playing at? Seriously. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave comments. And as always, I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.